Hi, and welcome to Something to Talk About. For the next hour, we are going to be learning in depth and in great detail about the Burlington housing market. But before I begin, as usual, I would like to thank the crew here tonight. We have Chris Flaherty, who is one of the production coordinators here, who helps keep BCAT and all the productions running very smoothly. We have Colleen Moore, director extraordinaire, and Maddie Shipka. And Colleen and Maddie are volunteers who have given up their Wednesday evening to come and help me out on the show. So I thank them very much. I would also like to thank my husband Paul for staying home for daddy date night. Hopefully the kids are finally in bed, but I doubt it. There. We are live this evening, so if you would like to give us a phone call to ask us a question, you can always give us a call at 781-270-9199 and ask us a question. The phone number's on your screen right now. Or if you have a question or a suggestion for a future topic, you can always shoot me an email. Sorry, I've been out in the sun too long. Shoot me an email at talk@bcattv.org. I love to get email that isn't spam, so shoot me a note and say hi. Now, all the administrative stuff is out of the way. I would like to introduce my wonderful guests for this evening. We have Susan Kadilak and Lisa Van, who are both realtors in this market.
Yeah.
And you are going to help my head from exploding and explain to me what is going on in Burlington. So thank you for coming.
Thank you for having us.
Now, before we get into the whole detail about the housing market here in Burlington, can you tell me a little bit about yourselves, where you grew up, how you came to the Burlington area, and what got you interested in real estate?
Sure, I'll start. I grew up in Everett. I moved to Woburn in 2002, and then I moved to Burlington. I've been living in Burlington since 2008. And I have actually been in real estate since 2002. I started not too long after high school, so I've been in for 14 years. So I have family who are realtors, and so they were doing it, so I did it.
Why not? That's kind of how it happens,
Yeah.
you know, everybody around you does it. And
Yeah, so all right, we'll do that too.
it's kind of become ingrained in your DNA.
Yeah.
I'm a late bloomer.
Which is fine.
I had my own business for 30 years. I was in financing. I did mortgaging. I had my real estate license in 2005. I took the test with a friend to assist and help her
Oh, okay.
get the license, and she flunked and I passed. So I shelved it. And I said, someday as I get older or I do something different, I'm going to turn on the real estate license. So in 2013, I switched it on, and I had the pleasure of meeting Sue, and now I work with her, and she's mentoring me and helping me along, and here we are.
Excellent.
Doing your show tonight.
Now, you said you got licensed before and then you just turned it on. Did you have to get recertified? Is it like something that you have to get
have
relicensed?
to maintain
or take another
12
test?
credits
Or
every 2 years in this course.
Oh,
So
okay.
I didn't have to take any courses until I activated it.
Okay, now what are the licensing requirements for becoming? Is it, you know,
Studying.
a 4-year program, a 2-year program, or just a, you know, certification? Is it reciprocal in other states?
So
Are you interested in reciprocity in other states, or?
Yeah, so unfortunately, it's just a certification. It's a fairly, simple, you do the course. I believe now it's up to 40 hours, which is an increase from what it was when I did it.
Okay.
And then you have to pass 2 exams, a state exam and a federal exam. And I believe Rhode Island will reciprocate. Some states will reciprocate, but you
Okay.
have to pass their state portion, and some states don't.
Okay, so you don't necessarily have to take coursework, you just have to
But if
pass
you
the
have
Depends,
test.
multiple,
it's state by state.
if you have multiple licenses, you might have to maintain the CEUs in each state too.
Right.
Okay, and how often do you have to get relicensed? Every 2 years, you said?
Every 2 years. You have
Every 2
12
years.
credits every 2 years.
Okay. Well, that sounds fun.
Awesome.
Education is needed in
Enter
today's market.
sarcasm here. Okay, so what are the advantages or disadvantages of buying right now, like in 2016?
So we have historically low interest rates, which is great because it increases purchasing power with the increase in housing prices.
Okay.
It helps a buyer afford a larger mortgage because the payment is lower. It's because we're in a good market, there are more loan products.
Okay.
Fannie Mae, the minimum down payment is 3%. Minimum credit score is 620. So there are more options for people who want to buy. You don't necessarily need 20% down. Even in some of the bigger loans, they're coming out with products that are, 10% down.
Now, do you get like a
different
better
requirements.
interest rate the bigger percentage you put down, or does that really
You
not
can't at
matter?
all credit score. There are a lot of things that play into it.
Okay.
So it really depends. And then there are, different programs like Mass Housing, FHA. So there are a lot of programs out there that can help get you into a home if you want to be into a home, and the low interest rates help, keep
Now,
the payments down.
I think we talked about this a little earlier when we first got to the studio, but is there like a rule of thumb roughly before you go to a lending organization what you can generally afford? Is it like, 3 times your salary, 4 times your salary? Is it totally, I'm assuming it's related to your salary somehow.
So it's related to your salary and your debt ratios.
Okay.
So if you make, $100,000, but you have, 2 car payments and credit cards, obviously that throws off your ratio. So they count.
Student loans.
Yeah, and I mean, student loans is a big one. They just came out with a study, that said that there's a large number of people with student loans that are putting off purchasing a home because it's like they're coming out of school with a mortgage already that they have to pay. So it
Sometimes
is.
it's more than a mortgage.
Yeah.
It is.
So it is affecting the housing market, and you did mortgages for a little while, so you probably would have more specifics.
Well, they do have a lot of great programs out there for first-time buyers.
Okay.
Mass Housing, FHA. And when you get an interest rate and you go in there using debt to ratio to be able to qualify you for what type of a loan you can take out. And when you get that number, that's the one that you should pretty much stay within.
Okay.
Then you can talk to your loan advisor. We always ask you possibly to be pre-approved before you
Okay.
start looking in the market, because the inventory is low and houses are going fast. But once you
Okay.
get approved and you're there, you're pretty much on your way to being able to buy a brand new home. But your interest rate is factored into the percentage you put down and the credit score that you have. And
How many years you want your mortgage?
yeah, and the lesser money that you put down, you could probably get stuck with mortgage insurance, which
Right.
used to be
Oh, okay.
78% of the value of the house once it was paid. 78% of the value of the house once it was paid up. You used to be able to terminate it, but now they have it pretty much the whole thing of the loan. You pay it forever until you refinance and get into a
Oh, wow.
conventional loan. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So
Now, is refinancing still kind of a common practice? Because I've already bought my house 4 times.
I think mostly everybody has.
Yeah, as the interest rates go down, people, obviously they want the lower rate, it lowers their payment. So, yeah, there's
Or they
definitely a lot
turn
of
around and
refinancing
take the equity
happening.
out and do over their kitchen or
Yeah.
add a room on.
Some people do that.
No, I wouldn't do that.
And then when you finally get it
Yes,
paid
I did
off,
just get my kitchen redone for anyone out there who's curious.
and then when you finally get it paid off, you're taking it out to be able to send the kids to school, which is more than a house.
Yes, it is. Although right now, probably not.
Yeah.
It's about the same. So, in Burlington, we've seen a lot of new houses being constructed.
Mhm.
Now, I've lived here for just about 14 years now. And now I have a family. What are the advantages, disadvantages of my adding on and adding an addition or, doubling the size of my house versus selling and going and buying a brand new house? Is there like a rule of thumb that you should or a checklist that you should go through?
So there's a few different things. Number one is location. Do you like your location? Do you like your neighborhood? That's the
I have
number
too
one
much
thing.
stuff. I don't want to move it.
I know, everybody does. I know. We have a cute little slide that we bring when people want to sell. And it's 2 kids who have their arms crossed and they're mad because of all the work that they have to do before they put their house in the market. So I tell them this is how you're going to feel after I tell you everything that you have to do. But, it really comes down to location. Where every town right now has low inventory. So it may be that staying where you are is a better option if you can't find another home in a location that you like. But will adding on make you lose your yard? I know we have a lot of good lot sizes in Burlington, but some people don't. So it might not make sense. And then the financial impact, are you going to be overbuilt,
The neighborhood.
for the neighborhood?
Oh.
So there
okay.
is a cap. I had someone last week, they had a, like a Cape style house with a garage, and they said, oh, we want to build over the garage and put a big master suite. And the question at that point is, are you going to stay in the house? Because if you're planning on selling the next 5 years, you'll never get your money back.
Okay.
So
yeah, I
at
was going
some
to ask you,
point-
is there like a time frame that you should consider? And I had heard years ago that it was like a 5-year.
Yeah, I mean, it really depends because you can't predict
Okay.
the housing market cycle. But, you know,
The
as
5-year
of right
mark.
now, that money would be more money than he wouldn't get the money back.
Okay.
At that point, it might not make financial sense, but
Okay.
maybe if it's the location you want to be in, if it's the schools you want to be in, for where you have to commute to work, if everything else about it works for you,
Mhm.
and that's what you want, then it may make sense because you're going to live there for a long time, and that gives you the house that you want. And the rising housing prices also help you because you will get equity.
Oh, okay.
You know,
Out
they're
of the
building
house.
bigger homes,
Yeah.
so when you add on and you build a bigger home, it fits into the housing market. There is a market for it. You know, most of the new houses being built right now are around 3,300 square feet.
Okay.
So if you were to make your house 6,000 square feet, now you're kind of out of
yeah, you kind of
you're kind of out of the
push
market.
yourself out of the market.
Right. So you have to
Okay.
kind of look at all that kind of stuff and weigh it and see what makes
Now,
sense
if somebody
for your
were
own
interested
situation.
in it, or had this dilemma, could they talk to you?
Absolutely, yeah. yeah.
Okay. I wasn't sure if you would only say, no, sorry, don't want to talk to you unless you want to buy a house.
No, absolutely not. No,
okay.
we meet with plenty of sellers who, you know, are trying to decide what to do because the inventory's low. And you really can't make that decision until you know, what is my house worth right now? What is it going to cost me to get what I want in the market? And what is it going to cost me to make the changes I want to my house? And is it worth it? So we're happy to
okay.
come out and give people that information because you can't say, I want to sell my house unless you have all that information first.
Okay. Now, you mentioned inventory being low. Does that, okay, keep in mind, I was a psychology major. I know nothing about real estate.
Okay.
You're doing great.
So if there's low inventory, does that mean it's a buyer's market or a seller's market or both?
Sellers.
So
Low inventory
typically, when
sellers.
there's low inventory in a price bracket, it's a seller's market. So in most areas right now, we're seeing a seller's market.
And how, is there like an average length of time that a house is on the market?
So right now in Burlington, the average market time is 47 days before they get an offer.
Really?
Yeah. So
Okay.
now that,
Because like the house right at the end of the street, it seemed like the sign went up and like the next day it was,
so it's going to depend on your price bracket, especially in
okay.
Burlington where we have a lot of new construction. So the new
Okay.
construction adds to the overall average because they
sits
take
a little
longer.
longer.
They sit longer.
okay.
So in a
Now, does
and
this
the-
also take into consideration that the for sale sign is up when it's just the frame of the
Yeah.
house and it takes
right,
a couple of months to build a
Yeah.
house?
yeah.
So,
So that
okay.
adds to the time. But I looked at the price brackets, you know, in the lower price brackets, and it's about 30 days to an offer in Burlington, excluding the higher priced homes.
And is it still roughly like a 2-month waiting period for closing?
Yeah, I would say about 45 days
Okay.
to 2 months.
I just had another question. It totally flew out of my mind. Oh, okay. Speaking of the market and the price ranges and everything, it seems like in Burlington there are $400,000 houses and $900,000 houses. There's not a lot in between. Why? Or why not? Or
Well,
yeah.
so right now there's, I have the numbers
Yeah, I know. I'm
here.
jumping around my cheat sheet.
No, that's
Sorry.
okay. So yeah, so there's 38 houses in the market right now in Burlington, and 24 of those are 750 or more.
Wow.
So there is.
Okay, so you can find something for $750.
You
Okay.
can. So there is low
I
inventory.
have no desire to move. I love my house. I love my new kitchen, even though a tree almost took it out this week.
Good thing it went the other way. That would have been
They
not
had a new
fun.
dining room added.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Would have taken out the deck first. But anyway,
Yeah.
I digress.
Big plans.
So, 750 and up. So how many houses? You said 38?
38 total.
Oh, okay.
24 of those are 750 and up.
Now, how often, and then I'll probably get to this, how often are houses purchased by contractors? Like a contractor taking a $400,000 house, leveling it to build a $900,000 house.
So in the last year, we've had 36 brand new houses sold.
Okay.
4 under contract right now, and 17 are on the market. So that's a lot of inventory for new construction in
is.
Burlington. It's a lot of houses.
But Burlington has also added a lot, like over on Muller Road behind the new market basket that's now like 5 years old or something.
Yeah.
They added like 80 houses over there or something. So
Yeah.
that's considered new
It started
construction
in
as
the high
well
sixes
as.
and 700s, and they're only 2-bedroom houses.
Really?
Mm.
Wow.
Are you talking about the condos?
No,
The-
Oh, I
the
thought they were like
freestanding
I thought they were like real houses.
Yeah, the houses off of Muller Road, right in the back
Oh,
of the condos that were built.
Okay.
Because there were condos built over there too.
Yeah.
Because I'm also realizing out of this, long time ago, it was always an advantage to buy a house over a condo because the resale factor
It's always higher, yeah.
was always better for a house. Is that still the case? Because it seems like Burlington is popping up condos all over the place.
High demand for condos, but it's mostly, you'll see some of the seniors will downsize and go into them if they're built right. But
Okay.
these
Yeah.
construction companies that are coming in and putting them together really aren't taking the seniors into consideration because they're putting multiple levels in.
Oh yeah, like
Yeah,
townhomes.
and
Yeah.
people are selling their houses to get away from stairs,
Mhm.
and
maintenance.
they're putting more and more stairs in, so it's drawing in families and it's drawing in professionals, more so than the seniors, because
Okay.
one of the biggest discussions that we've come across is a lot of seniors saying they want to sell because they can't handle the house anymore, but they have nowhere to go.
Right.
Oh, okay. Now, is
No.
that unique to Burlington, or is that like the general area?
It's in areas that really don't allow a lot of in-law apartments,
Okay.
right?
Well,
Speaking
Right
of
on that?
Well, Burlington allows in-law apartments, but I mean, I
Okay.
think compared to other,
But you still need an in-law to
Yeah,
move
the
in
children have to move in and design an in-law, or take over the family house or
Okay.
they
whatever,
don't all
but
say yes to that.
no, yeah.
because they don't really have a lot for the aging community.
Okay.
So a lot of them are sticking in their homes and trying to keep their roof over their head and maintain them and take care of them. And
It doesn't always work.
No. And those are the houses that the contractors are finding because they're knocking on the doors. They're not really in great shape, so
Yeah.
they're approaching them and saying, "Would you like to get out?"
Okay.
You know.
So, speaking of new construction,
Mm-hmm.
how many of those new construction houses have been put on the market by the contractors? And then how many of the new construction houses, if you have a number for that, are people who want a bigger house but decide, no, this 3-bedroom, 1,500 square foot house isn't going to work, so I'm going to buy a new house at a different location, level it, and build my own?
So we don't see a lot of the data on the people who take their own houses and
Okay.
knock them down and renovate them. You know, when we see the contractors, we have that 36 number because that's how many that they've put on the market and sold
Okay.
that were brand new. But overall, it may be someone who bought their home, 5 years ago, who
Okay.
now is deciding, it's time to knock it down. So they might just refinance. They might pull a construction loan. So we don't necessarily see of someone coming in and purchasing that home to knock it down or renovate. Some
okay.
people are doing it in place because Burlington has so much new construction, because the values are
Okay.
rising. They might say, you know what, instead of trying to buy one that someone already built, I'll
Okay.
take the ranch I have right now, knock it down, and do it right on the lot that I already own.
Okay. Because I've seen like a house where there's like a house here and a house like right next to it. I don't
Right
know how
next
the
to each
builders
other.
build it because
Yeah.
there's like,
And
2
then they'll
feet of
knock it
space.
down after, yeah. So they'll do that so they can stay in the house and they have to rent something while they build.
Wow. Okay.
It's turning into a very affluent community.
It is. Is that a
Burlington.
good thing or a bad thing in your opinion?
It's,
Or do you
I think
not
it's
want to
good
talk to
because
that?
it's not going to raise your taxes. The new employment, the new city that's bringing in all the new companies and stuff are going to keep your tax rate low.
Okay.
But it also is bringing in a lot of your executives and high-paying jobs, which is calling for the bigger homes, which is bringing the
Mhm.
multi-million-dollar homes into Burlington as well.
Because I'm just, along those lines, you just perfect lead in. Thank you. With all of these bigger homes, the growth in both more houses around, more condos, more businesses, more restaurants. How does this impact the infrastructure? Like the police department, the fire department. I've known so many people, and I am one of the biggest whiners about Cambridge Street. Is it 2 lanes? Is it 1 lane? It's 1 lane that everybody drives is 2. How do we go about getting it an official 2 lanes? Because the population has grown so much that there's a traffic jam everywhere you look. Rush hour is, 12 hours of your day.
The problem with Cambridge Street, you drive down it, there's no room for expansion because they built the properties on top of it. So a lot of it would probably have to be taken over by eminent domain.
Oh.
Which would knock a lot of people out of their homes and businesses.
I mean, I think with that area where Orange Leaf used to be, where they're knocking that down, I think they're talking about, some of the impact of traffic because they want to put some more business there. They want to, I think they're talking about putting some condos over the businesses at this point. But yeah, I mean, all the industry and all the new homes, you knock down a $400,000 home, you now have $1 million home, you're more than doubling the taxes that's the town is taking in. So in addition to, it's putting more stress on the infrastructure, but you're also increasing the tax revenue coming into the town. So I think,
because I'm also thinking like the schools themselves. I mean, Memorial was built, and I heard that it's already too small for the population.
Right. So I think, those are things that people in town are going to have to look at as the town grows and changes.
It's pretty much, there's not too much land available in Burlington anymore for building. It's pretty much all houses that are being rebuilt, aren't they now, Susan?
A lot of the new construction is you're taking a smaller home and replacing it. Not all of it, but the majority of it are what they would call spot lots. So one house in an established street, you have a small home, knock it down and rebuild. So yeah, there were homes already in a lot of the lots that the new construction is sitting on.
In a lot of your school systems, what usually happens is you might have like an influx of 1,000 kids one year, and then in a couple of years it might go down to 500. That happened while we were growing up. We had you look at your graduation classes and see how it changes. And it gets smaller and smaller, and as it goes, if the people decide to stay, the schools become empty. As they get older and they don't move on, the schools become empty. But it's a circle. It goes around and around.
Just looking at my notices. Now, I think you may have already touched upon this, but with the increased housing prices related to the schools, how, is Burlington pricing itself out of young families coming in or young professionals or?
I don't think so. I mean, the last home that I sold in Burlington that was over $1 million was a young family with 4 children. I know that there was another home that sold in the $1 million+ range, another young family with 4 children, another home that I have right now that's pretty close to $1 million. They have a middle schooler. So I think there are still young families moving in. They're just different. It's not
pay structure.
It's just coming from, some of them being relocated from out of state. I have one being relocated from out of country, one who has his business based in Burlington. So, I think with the increase in business and industry, we're also seeing people who may have higher incomes, and so so there's demand for the bigger homes. But there are still young families moving in. I mean, in my neighborhood, we had no young kids, and the young kids that came in were from the family who bought the home that was $1 million. So I don't think that the price necessarily means that we're losing young families. I'm just looking at my mortgage
and what I paid for the house, and I'm like, I can't imagine,
But the young kids that are coming out today, they're getting some really great jobs, and they're really getting some great paychecks too. It's amazing what they're starting them off at, but they have to pay all those student loans back too.
That's true.
On top of a mortgage, so.
Yeah, so I think we are seeing young families still coming in. It's just
the pre-approvals that are coming across the desks to be able to buy the homes. I mean, we're looking at $750,000, $800,000 in pre-approval for young kids who are just starting a life with no family. It's
Holy
amazing.
cow.
I know.
I'm in the wrong line of work.
It is amazing what's coming across the desk for pre-approval amounts.
Okay. So. Now, several years ago, maybe 5-6 years ago, it seemed that we've had a lot of foreclosures and short sales and banks taking over houses. It doesn't seem like that's still an issue today, is it? Still,
I mean,
you
there are
know,
still
an
auctions every week. There are still foreclosures happening.
issue? In Burlington or?
In Burlington, yep.
Okay.
There was one a couple weeks ago. I mean, I went to one a couple weeks ago in Burlington.
Okay.
It turned out that the bank purchased the home back, so they'll end up, you know, whatever they do with it. Sometimes they'll sell it on online auctions. Sometimes they'll clean it up and resell it. So we do still see it.
Okay.
But a lot of owners who may be upside down and delinquent on their payments, the rising prices are helping them because they, maybe 2 years ago, they owed more than the home was worth.
Okay.
But maybe now, because of the increased prices, maybe they can sell their home, pay off the note, not have to go through foreclosure,
Okay.
and that ends the foreclosure
And like
process.
refinance and get the lower interest rate, so you're not
A lot of
paying-
modifications came out to help people who are upside down in
Yeah.
homes too.
Yeah.
So different tactics came out.
Yeah, it
Chapter
depends on where you
13.
are in the process. I mean,
Yeah.
if you're that close to foreclosure, we haven't paid in 2 years, you may not be eligible to refinance. But
Okay.
sometimes you can sell and at least not have a foreclosure.
Okay. So you can still sell, okay. all right.
Yeah, so if you owe $350 and you haven't paid your mortgage in 2 years and it's now worth $375,
Mhm.
you can sell it for $375, pay off the bank,
Oh,
and now you're no longer in foreclosure because the home is paid off.
Now, I'm just, you know, as you're talking about foreclosures and property that doesn't seem to be well kept, there are some properties in Burlington that the house seems to need to be condemned. Now, does that mean somebody still owns the house and they don't want to sell it?
It depends. It could, I mean, you know, we see some homes where it may just be an older person living
Okay.
there who can't
Now,
maintain
these
the
are
home.
like abandoned houses.
Could be estate
Yeah,
homes that are
it
tied
could
up in
be.
litigation.
Yeah,
Okay.
sometimes if someone passes, they may need to get a
Okay.
license to sell. That can take some time.
Because I'm just thinking this must kind of destroy the houses worth the rest of the houses in
It
the
doesn't help the neighborhood.
No, it doesn't
Yeah,
help.
it doesn't
No.
really help.
No, and the foreclosure process can take years. So it could be that someone left their home 3 years ago or 4 years ago, and and the bank may still have not foreclosed on the property. So sometimes it takes that long. So it could be that the person still owns it, but it hasn't been foreclosed yet.
Is there any research? You know, I'm just thinking of this one particular house in my neighborhood that I feel so sorry for the neighbors because there's a big red X on the front door and the ceiling, the roof's collapsing. Is there any way to find out what the status is
Go
on?
to City Hall, look up the property,
Okay.
do a history on it.
Yeah, I mean, if there's a red X, that generally means that it's not safe for the
Well,
fire
yeah.
department to enter, so they know, you know, not to go in if there's a fire. But I mean, on the registry of deeds, you can see if
Is it like
If the-
public?
it's public
Record?
record. Yeah,
It's a
Okay.
public record, yeah.
yeah. So
'Cause
you
I
can,
don't, I don't mean to spy on people, but it's like,
but you can. It's very
you know,
easy.
this is kind of, you know, my kids love riding, you know,
It's got
they
to be
can't wait to
something
go on the school
against
bus.
it because it should have been picked up by now if it was sitting there that long, huh? So
It
might
depends. I've seen some go
Okay.
7, 10 years that where the bank still hasn't
Wow.
foreclosed. So it depends on the bank and how backlogged they
They're
are.
still cleaning up from 2005.
Yeah, they're still
The
out
mortgage
there. They're
industry,
not
yeah.
as prevalent as they were, but they're still out there.
Oh, okay. So I think we kind of already talked about how the housing market is related to the commercial market. You know, did you want to add anything to that?
I think
Because you got a lot of notes over there, and I'm
I
running
do
out of
have a lot of
questions.
notes. You sent me a lot of questions, so I take a lot of notes.
Which is good. Then I need to shut up and let you do some more talking.
So the only other thing that makes Burlington, you know, appealing. When I first started real estate 14 years ago, I started in Woburn, and people who looked in Woburn would also look in Burlington.
Okay.
You know, they would look in those two towns. But now I see that it's changed. People who look in Burlington are now looking Burlington, Bedford. So the nice thing that makes Burlington attractive is lower tax rate.
That's what got me here 14 years ago.
Yeah, so it does, you know, it does have an effect on a $500,000 house. You're paying another, you know, $2,000 a year at the Bedford tax rate. On a $750,000 house, you're saving $3,000 a year in taxes.
Wow.
So it's
Because you kind of have to incorporate that into your mortgage and your you know, maybe not the pre-approval process, but
It is. The mortgage takes into consideration taxes
Okay.
and insurance too.
right,
So
right.
those
So
are
you can
the-
afford more house where you have a lower tax rate. So at $3,000 a year on a $750,000 house, that's $250 a month. So that's pretty significant.
Okay. Now, can we talk a little bit more about condos?
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay, just making sure that you're okay with that. Because, you know, we talked about, you know, condos, they're more affordable than a freestanding house.
Right.
In most cases.
In most cases.
But you also have the condo fees.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how are the condo fees determined, and is there any regulation on the condo fees changing? Because, yeah, they could be an extra couple $100s a month.
Yeah. And that's also taken into account when they do your debt to income ratios and your payments. So
Okay.
they'll account that you may have, you know, whatever the fee is, $400. So the fees are established usually by an association,
Okay.
and they'll account what they estimate for plowing, for landscaping. Most associations will have a reserve fund. Banks like to see about a 10% reserve.
Okay.
You know, some associations plan for repairs like a roof, some don't.
Some don't.
Yeah, and if they don't, then you may have a special assessment. So, you know, it's important if you're looking at condos to see, you know, how
Structurally
the
built.
association is planning the finances.
In the association, it's very important to see how much they have in reserves. And you also have to take into consideration how much of the condo is being rented and how much is owned.
I was going to
Right.
ask that
Okay,
if there
because
are
if you're looking-
regulations
yeah,
about
if you wanna get-
percentages.
If you want to get a mortgage, a conventional mortgage, it has to be more like 55, 45. 55% of it has to be ownership.
Okay.
45% can be rented. But each bank has their own stipulation on that. So a lot of
Okay.
people who go out and buy condos think they're going to do it on their own, and they put their bids in. They get to the closing table, and the mortgage company is going, sorry, we can't do this loan. Because
Wow, it
Yeah,
takes
we-
it that long?
Yeah, I
Ooh.
mean, we've had some, we had one in particular where the bank said, oh, no problem, we can finance this, we can finance this. Well, the developer had held on to, I think it was 45 units or something. But if one person owns more than 10% of the units, it can be a problem for financing.
Oh.
So there are different things that they look at. And we got very close to closing before they said, oh, we can't do this loan. So we had to switch it over to a portfolio lender, which basically is a lender that will keep it, you know, like a small bank that will keep it on their own books and not try to sell the loan.
there's a lot of detail involved in buying a condo.
Yeah, condos are a
And
little
people who
more
just
involved.
walk in and think they can do it, really, they're going to get a lesson. Because as a real estate agent,
Anybody
I
who wants
learned
to
a
buy a
lesson.
house has to go into a lesson.
Oh
Yeah.
my
And then
goodness.
the FHA, if you have an FHA loan, the condo has to be
Okay.
FHA approved. So you may not be able to look at, you know, there may be some buildings that you can't purchase. And it takes a long time. I think it's about 6 months to get approved. So
Okay.
it's not like you can put your offer in and say, okay, we'll wait till you get approved, because it takes so long
Okay.
that by the time they get approved, if they get approved, you know, it could be 6 months later.
Okay, and you were talking about, you know,
Special assessment, you have to make sure that's not hidden in the background.
no, what's a special assessment?
It means that there could be an elevator replacement coming into the building, a new roof coming on the building, or they
Okay.
might have discovered the wooden structure they built is full of termites.
That would be bad.
So those are the things you kind of really have to look out for when you're buying a condo, looking at the way it's built, how
Okay.
long it's been there.
Now, are there still the stipulations where if you put an offer in contingent on an inspection, like you can
Absolutely,
for
yeah.
houses?
Yep, and you want it also contingent on reviewing the condo docs, so you can see what the rules and regulations are, who is responsible for what. In some
Okay.
condos, you have to replace, you're responsible for your windows and your heating system. In other buildings, the association takes care of the windows.
Okay.
So there are different things
So
you
they
want to
all
know.
match.
Right, and even if you're responsible for them, you still have to get their approval of what you put
okay.
in. Usually you can't just put in what you want. So it's just really who pays for them.
So I can't pick my front door hot pink?
You could, but
You
when
On
I
the
get a
inside
little,
you can.
you get a little visit from the project manager.
Yeah. Now, earlier you had mentioned about, you know, a developer owning a certain percentage.
Mhm.
Are there special stipulations or special requirements, like there had been some talk, you know, 5 years ago with all the new condo development, and now in the Building 19 area, about the condos being on the top and businesses being on the bottom? Is there like special regulations for getting a loan for?
Are you talking more like zoning? Is the
Yeah,
city-
well, I'm just
So-
thinking,
Yeah, so mixed use, so if it's one association, so we had a building that had some commercial, some condos, and if it's mixed use, it can be a problem for some banks. And what they did in that particular building was they had one association for the commercial.
Okay.
They had another association for like the 2 floors of residential condos.
Okay.
Then they had another association for the top floor. So a little bit unusual, but it made the financing work.
I'm just thinking, okay, that sounds really complicated, and then all of a sudden I had a flashback to the Natick Mall, where
Oh, right,
they
yeah.
just. I went there I went there before they did all the development,
Yeah.
and then I went there once and I got lost, just trying to find my way through the parking lot because it's like it's a city in itself, and I'm
Yeah.
thinking of the logistical nightmare of figuring out who's responsible for what there. That's
Yeah.
got to be scary.
That's what they do in these little
Yeah.
communities. They
Please
did it
don't say
over
there's
in the-
plans to do that at the Burlington Mall.
They
Oh,
did
no.
it. They did it at the
We're
they
gonna
did
put
it in
her there.
Wellington Circle and in Everett. They got that little community in there, and then they did it down at the place in Peabody, Linfield, the Linfield Market. They have all
Oh.
the condo
Oh,
and
do
the.
they have condos in there? I didn't know that.
And I'll tell you,
Now, do
it's
you
a bursting community. The both of them, between the mixtures there, people love living there and being able to have the entertainment all downstairs in the stores. They're very,
And then it's quiet at night because the storekeepers go
It's
home.
closed,
Yeah.
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 Now, in the greater Boston market, do you see that mixed resident and retail becoming a trend? A good trend?
It's
Or do you think
working
it's just a
out.
fad,
Yeah, I think
or-
it depends on the area. I mean, I think
Yeah.
it works. I mean, it seems like it's working in Everett and where they have it. I mean, that's more in the city. So,
Plus
and I
they
think
have the
people
Orange
like to
Line
be.
running right in there too, which makes it
Yeah,
convenient
it's
to
right
the
next
city
to
for
Wellington.
travel.
I mean, I think even in Burlington, for someone who, I mean, most people buy a condo because if they're coming from a house, because they don't want to maintain
Mhm.
the home, they don't want to shovel
Yard
anymore.
work.
Yeah.
Water the flowers.
Yeah, I'm
So
done.
yeah, so to have the convenience, to have shopping and everything right there, it makes it even more convenient. I think. Yeah.
But they were talking about the younger generation really not wanting the car, but being able to just get into a place that has a bed, a small kitchen, and a refrigerator, and just being able to go out and enjoy the city,
Mhm.
be able to go out to dinner, go to the theater and everything. So they're moving into smaller space.
Okay.
So these communities are doing better because the average condo, I think, over like in the Wellington area might be 2,000. I'm not not really sure, but I think 2,000.
That's the size of my house, and you're saying that's a small condo? Okay, no,
They do have 3 bedrooms in there, yeah. But they're, the people that you talk to, they live there, they love it because it's just like, they feel like they're living in the city,
cool.
you know?
So let's get back to, or anything you want to add on condos before I randomly change the subject to something totally different. And now for something completely different. If I were, which I'm not, getting ready to put my house on the market,
Mm-hmm.
what would you advise me to do?
So-
Water the lawn. No, it's
Yeah.
just,
You'll get in trouble.
yeah, I know.
So the first thing I would say is have someone come over and look at it because it's not always the same advice for everyone. I
Okay.
recently had a seller where I told her do nothing.
Really?
Because things were very dated and any money she put into the home would have been money in the trash. So I would say have
Why?
some.
Because you have a feeling that the new buyer would come and gut it anyway?
There were so many things that needed to be done
Oh,
that
okay.
it needed. Because she wanted to paint, refinish the floors.
The
and I said-
70s are back, Orange shag carpet is
Yeah.
no, I'm kidding.
Countertops too.
So in her
I
case,
interrupted.
it didn't make sense.
Okay.
We ran the numbers. We said how much would it cost to update? Does it make sense with the time it would take, the cash it would take? It didn't make sense. She
Okay.
would net more money leaving it the way it is.
But by inviting the realtor in there,
Mhm.
they can kind of advise you whether you should take a bucket of paint and do this or you shouldn't take a bucket of paint and do it.
Yeah, sometimes
Yeah.
it makes sense. I had one client, her bathroom was, on the line.
Mhm.
It was getting close to needing to be done. So we spent maybe $2,000, made a few changes, freshened it up, made it nice and clean, and we had 10 offers on her home.
Wow.
Yeah. So, I mean, there are some cases where it makes sense, depending on the condition, to put a little bit of money in. And then just in general, decluttering. But it really depends on the home. Some homes need staging. Some homes need
I need
updating.
to rent a whole warehouse to declutter my house.
I tell them, get the dumpster out. You're going to move anyway, so you might as well start now.
I'm not moving. I'm not moving ever.
So it really depends, and we look at who's our buyer going to be, what are they looking for, does it make sense to spend money to attract them? I mean, in general,
But sometimes just a fresh coat of paint. I mean,
it does a lot.
It does a lot.
It really does.
In a house that has a little bit more update, it does wonders.
Yeah.
But in a house that really, someone's going to come in and tear down walls and tear down kitchens,
Oh, okay.
it's just not advisable to tell them to take all that stuff out and make them spend more money than they have to.
Yeah.
She's very good about picking that stuff up.
And then the colors too. Sometimes we come in and they'll say, "Oh, we just painted," and I look and I'm like, I wish you asked me about the color first. That blue doesn't work.
Mint green is not a good idea.
No, I had a
If
client.
you are thinking about selling in the next 5 years, you are starting to do changes in
Okay.
the house, it's a good idea to ask the realtor what the trendy colors are, because you're going to be selling and you don't really want to go into that.
And
in
then
the
you'll
last
do all
minute.
these fixes and not want to move.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's good too.
No, that would work.
yeah. I had a client one time. I went in, the rug in the family room was forest green. And they said, "Oh, you can tell us anything." And I said, "Well, that rug, that's got to go." I said, "We can't have a green
not
rug."
my green rug.
Well, they were fine with the rug. And then
Okay.
the family room also had a gold chandelier. I said, "That's got to go too." And that's where they all said, they were
Gold.
looking at me and I said, "What's the matter?" And they said, "Oh, that was our mother's chandelier." And I said, "Good, now one of you can take it home because no one wants it." So it's, so we put a nice ceiling fan in for the family room. So sometimes, little things like that you have to do if you're a little bit dated and you want to make it more appealing.
Okay. And the whole staging thing.
Yeah.
And
The
all
key
that.
is don't be offended. Where all the changes we recommend are to get you more money.
Get you more money.
Yeah, it's not because we hate your curtains. It's because they
Well, you
they
do,
gotta go.
but
The buyers might not love them, and we want you to get as much as you can for your
like
home.
that
And if
house that has all the cat walkways all over the house.
yeah,
and-
those have to go.
yeah, those have to
In
go.
the 70s, though, it was very acceptable to have all your beautiful hardwood floors covered with shag rugs. And a lot of people still have those
That was the
houses.
house I grew up in.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so did we all did. That
Yeah.
was efficient back then because it kept the heat in. The oil bill was atrocious
Yeah.
back then. But now, if we go in and see something like that, and we know that the beautiful hardwood floors are out, if we can't get them to take it all out, we at least get them to take one room out.
Try
so
to do
they
at
can
least a
see it.
room.
Yeah.
Buyers want to see what is it because all they can imagine is that the hardwood floors are ruined and they have no idea what they look like. So if
See, in
we
the
can
60s and 70s, they put the hardwood and covered it up with carpet.
Yeah.
In the 80s, they just put the carpet
just the
in.
carpet.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Back to hardwood. So that's where we are now. So we have everyone. I had a client. They said, "Oh, but right when we moved in 18 years ago, we put this carpet in." And I said, "Well, now we got to rip it up." So
It's 18 years old.
yeah, it's time.
It's time.
Yeah.
You're supposed to, I think I heard a statistic about the average, lifespan of a coat of paint is like 7 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's
all
like after
updates.
7 years color.
All updates, your kitchen, your bathroom, anything. Once you get around 9 or 10 years old, they no longer carry the value of a new renovation. And we have people who call us and they say, "I did my whole kitchen over with custom cabinets," and then we get there and they forget to mention they did it in 1965. That has happened to me.
Detail.
And I walked in and I'm like, "Where's the new kitchen?" And yeah, I'm like, it's 30 years old now.
If it was
So-
done 15 years old, it's considered old. If it was done just on the cusp of 10, it's old.
Yeah, anything around that, that's kind of the rule of thumb. 9 or 10 years old, it's no longer carries that value of new.
Gee, and I was psyched when I bought my house that it was only 20 years old.
I know.
Yeah. So
I'm going through it.
Now, you had mentioned, we have a phone call.
oh,
So let's take a look. Caller, can you hear us? Maybe.
maybe he doesn't want to talk to us after all.
It's the first time in a while we've gotten a phone call. So,
Greg. Oh,
Yes.
there you go.
Am I on the air?
Yes, you're on there.
Hello. I can't hear you. Can you hear me?
Not really. Can we get it through to the studio?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you. Hello?
Greg, we can't quite hear you in the studio. I know they're working on it in the control
Hello?
room to figure out how to get you in here so we can hear you. But when we are done talking to Greg, one of the questions that I did have was the bidding wars.
Okay.
I wanted to talk
Yeah, we can
briefly
talk about
that because
that.
you mentioned something about 10 offers on a house, and I'm like, ooh.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So we will try again with the phone call later. We're having some technical difficulties. So let's talk about the bidding wars. Are
Okay.
there still bidding wars?
Absolutely. Absolutely, because there's low inventory everywhere, including Burlington and certain price brackets. So when there's less inventory available than buyer demand, you can have multiple offers. I think 10 is the most I've had.
That's a lot. Yeah,
yeah,
usually
it's a lot.
like maybe 2 or 3.
Right.
Now, in the event of a bidding war,
Mm-hmm.
generally, do they end up going over asking price?
Yeah.
And is there like a ballpark percentage? Do they go up like by 1,000, by 5,000, by 10,000? If you were stuck in a bidding war,
Mm-hmm.
what advice, or if I were stuck in a bidding war buying somebody's house, what advice could you give me?
If you were a buyer or if you're my
If
seller.
I was a buyer.
Different advice for who you are.
Okay, if I was a buyer. Well, we'll
Okay.
do seller in a moment.
Okay, so if you were my buyer, my first question is, because when you're in a bidding war, sometimes it becomes about that you want to win the house.
Mm-hmm.
And so my first question to you is,
'Cause-
do you really want the house, or are we trying to win the house?
Oh,
Because
okay, I get what
sometimes
you're
people
saying.
get caught up and they might go higher than they want to, and then they win the house, and then they say, oh, maybe I don't really want the house. So the first question is, how would you feel if you didn't
Okay.
get the house? So if the answer is,
Because I
Susan,
get wet
I
when I live
really,
in a parking lot,
you what?
I would get wet if I lived in a parking lot.
You would.
So I really need this house.
We need the house. So if we need the house, and this is the house we want, and Susan, get us the house, and this is what we want.
Okay.
There are different tactics we can use. One is an escalation clause, where you write in your offer, you make a good offer,
Okay.
but you also write in that you're willing to pay a certain amount of money more than any other offer. So that will shoot you to the top of the list very quickly. And at that point, you
Yeah,
also
but you don't know what any other offer is, so
Well,
then
you
you
have-
have to go back to the bank and say, oh,
Yeah.
hi.
You
Remember
try to
me?
stay within your means.
well, if they call you back and
Okay.
say it's a $400,000 house, say your
Okay.
limit is $450,000, and they call you back and say, well, we're at $475,000, you have the option to say, you know what, okay,
Okay.
too much. So it doesn't
Because
lock
I'm
you.
like, if it's a 400 and I'm willing to go up to 500 and it comes back at 750, it's
Right.
like, "Ugh."
Yeah, so you have the option to say no, but at least it puts you in the running, and at least you know, you don't wonder later, if you offer $450,000 and a month and a half later you see that house sold for $452,000, how are you going to feel at that point? You're going to
Yeah.
kick yourself. So that's one option if you really want
Okay.
a house. And there are other things you can do. You can drop your home inspection. You can do a home inspection for informational purposes only. And that means that you still do a home inspection, but you're telling the seller, I'm not going to come back to you and ask you for money off. I'm going to take
Okay.
the house as is, but I want to do a home inspection so I know what I'm buying, and you still reserve the right. You can still
Okay. You can
back
still
out. I
back
mean,
out if you
yeah,
need
I
a
mean,
new
you
roof
lose-
and your chimney's
Because you
about
can
to
put
collapse.
a cap on how much money
Yeah,
that
you-
you're willing to spend if you find it in the home
Yeah,
inspection.
so
Okay.
you could lose your deposit, but still $1,000 versus not having a home inspection at all. Sometimes it's worth
Okay.
the trade-off. You can close quickly or find out when the seller wants to close.
Okay.
Work with their dates. I've seen buyers, even though they're getting a mortgage, I've seen buyers waive their financing contingency and take on that risk.
Wow.
I've seen, and buyers too, some of them will write a letter to the seller
Okay.
to pull at the
Does that
heartstrings.
ever work?
So
I've heard like stories of, the
Yeah.
nice sentimental letters.
yeah,
And,
I mean, when I represent a seller, we agree up front. I take them out because I don't want my sellers making decisions on letters, but some sellers do. So if they work and you're a buyer, I say, why not try
Okay.
everything you can?
Now let's flip the situation around. If I were a seller and I were in a bidding war, or I had a bidding war on my house,
Yeah.
because I wouldn't be in a war.
Right. No.
I only had 3 cups of coffee today. I'm fading. What advice,
So we would obviously look at all the offers.
Okay.
We look at everything from financing, higher down payment, lower risk.
Okay.
We look at the inspection contingency. We look at the dates. We
Okay.
look at the price. The highest price is not always the one that you take. I have had cases
Really?
where the
Okay.
seller might take, I had one this spring where the highest offer was a 3% down payment, and the second highest offer was a $100,000 down payment. Now that carries a lot less risk for the seller, so we decided that that was the one that we were going to go with. So
okay.
we have to look and consider everything.
Okay.
And then at that point, when we do have multiple offers, we want to go back to the buyer, all the buyers, and say, hey, we have 3 offers or 5 offers or 8 offers. This is what we have.
Okay.
Is this your highest offer?
That's
We
the
may
best,
get an offer with an escalation clause, and then decide what to do with it at that point. So we'll work through it so that by the offer that we choose has the best terms for the seller. And again, it's not always the highest price. Sometimes a lot of times it's price.
You
Because-
gotta worry
That is
about,
good.
You gotta worry about it
Well-
appraising out too, right?
Well, if someone drops their mortgage contingency, you don't have to worry about the appraisal. If someone is putting down 40%, the appraisal isn't as much of an issue. So that that stuff can balance itself out. If one has a home inspection contingency and one doesn't, but the one with the home inspection contingency is another $20,000, hey, we can give them $5,000 after the home inspection. We still made more money. So so we kind of weigh all that stuff out and see how what's going to work out best for you in the end with when you want to move. And having multiple offers gives you as a seller more options. It gives you more options on when you close, and it lets you choose your buyer. So it gives you more flexibility, and in that case, and that just shows where it really is more of a seller's market in most of the communities, because we do still see a lot of bidding wars.
It still amazes me with all of the new construction and the new everything
Yeah.
that there's still a lack of sufficient housing. That there are only 30 houses. What was it? 47 houses.
38.
38.
Yeah, and
Okay.
24. So the higher price you go, obviously there are fewer buyers.
Okay.
So when you get to that middle price range, where there are more buyers than there are homes, they fight over them.
Yeah.
Now we talked earlier in the show about how the market with the foreclosures was dating back to 2005, 2008-ish.
The mortgage disaster.
Yeah.
So more recently, how has the market changed over the past 5 or 6 years, like since 2010?
So
or
I'm going
11
to
or-
use, I did pull some stats. I used 2005 because that's what's really considered the peak.
Okay.
So in 2005, our average sale price was about $442,000.
Okay.
And from that peak, right now, Burlington averages $547,000. So we are we're up at 19% from the previous peak right
Wow.
now,
Okay.
and that's on the average sale price. And compared to around 5 years ago, 2009 was considered now around the bottom of the market.
Okay.
The average sale price was about $388,000. So we're up 29% from the
Wow.
low. So it's made quite a jump.
Now, that sounds like it's like a little swirly thing.
Yeah.
Does the market generally go kind of up and down, or is it generally an upward momentum?
I
Is it
mean, it's, we had kind of, we had a really high rise. We had a drop.
And a crash.
We're high again.
Do you
I mean,
anticipate another crash?
I mean, they're predicting right now that we still have a few good years of a good housing market, and then appreciation, they're saying will
Okay.
still happen, but maybe at a slower rate, because we are at quite a fast pace right now. But there's so much demand. When you have one home and 10 buyers, sometimes a home sell for more than the comps, not because we can show that it's worth this much money, but because the competition drives the price.
And the mortgage market is a
competition
little
is-
bit more leveled out now too. I mean, they've got a
Yeah.
better grip on it with the information they're asking, they're getting from the homeowners, they're more qualified buyers.
Oh,
They've
okay.
weeded out all the stuff that they've had out there in the past, that they were giving loans to people, ghost
Well,
buyers and everything
yeah,
else.
people were just like,
It was
you know,
unbelievable
again, I'm
what
going
was
back
going
to
on in that
the
industry.
mid-2000s,
Yeah.
you know, 2003, 2005, and mortgage companies were like ready to give you a loan just because you were upright and breathing. you
Yeah,
know.
I bought my first house when I was 20, and they said here, they gave me a loan, no problem. I couldn't even believe it. I was like, really? Yeah, okay. So I
It
bought
was
my house.
very easy to get a loan back then.
Yeah.
I mean, they've really corrected all that.
Yeah.
You pretty much have to put everything on the table now. You have to explain every transaction you do, your statements. If you have any large deposits, you've got to have a good reason
An
why that money
explanation
is in
for
there,
them. Yeah.
withdrawn. They're really very, very strict on what they're doing to give out a mortgage today. So it helps the industry as far as keeping the rates the same
Okay.
and keeping the business going smooth.
Yeah.
I
Now
don't-
that would affect things if the interest rates went up, because even a small change in the interest rate,
Ballpark, what is the interest rate now?
it's in the high threes right now.
High threes? Okay.
Yeah.
When I was working in the mortgage industry, you were watching the interest rate by the hour. And
Wow.
that's how much of an impact it could have on a pre-approval, because it can throw off what you can purchase
Right.
on your purchase power. But
Okay.
that's how flexible it was back in 2005, 6, and 7. Understanding the real estate market now, I didn't realize it back then, but knowing the real estate market now, I see how it worked on the pre-approvals for houses.
Oh, okay.
Because you show a slide on that in the workshop as well. The interest
Yeah,
of
on
it.
how much it affects, I don't have it with me,
The
but I have
buying
some
power,
data
okay.
on how much, 1% change in the interest rate can really change how much a buyer can afford. So then, it has that effect on the housing market, because you no longer have that many buyers who can afford a $600,000 home. So it shrinks your buyer pool when the interest rates go up.
Okay. Now, you just mentioned, we're going to go into commercial mode now.
Okay.
You mentioned workshops.
Yes.
Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, we do one once a month at Grandview
Okay.
Tavern, and it's really an informational workshop.
Okay.
And we talk about a lot of these things, about how the interest rates affect buying power. We talk about what to do to your home. We talk about the trending colors. We do talk about moving versus staying where you are and adding on or renovating. So we talk about, it's a little over an hour long, and we go really in depth on basically on the whole real estate market, and
Cool.
just it's really just informational for people who are kind of in that process.
Now, is it for new home buyers only, or
it's
just
great for
anyone?
It's
buyers
it's
and
good for
sellers.
buyers, sellers. We talk about things that we tell sellers to do to get the home ready, and we also want buyers to know that stuff, because we don't want them to fall for it. When
Okay.
a home is staged, we want buyers to recognize that.
Yeah.
When a bathroom is painted but not renovated, some buyers might say, "Oh, the bathroom's done," but it might not really be done.
Yeah.
So, we talk about that kind of stuff, about painting tile, about
Okay.
painting old
Can
cabinets.
you paint tile?
You can,
You
yeah.
can paint everything.
You can paint anything, yeah.
Should you paint tile?
Well, I don't think so, but people do. So, sometimes a buyer will go in and say, "Oh, we have a
painting
new
cabinets.
kitchen."
Okay, sometimes that'll
It's
work.
like doing the
but-
Yeah.
bathtub over. It's a special enamel paint that goes on it. It doesn't look too bad. I don't know what the life expectancy is on it though.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it does freshen up the look in a bathtub.
Yeah, just
a
so that a
bath
buyer
area.
understands what they're purchasing. Just because it looks pretty doesn't
Okay.
mean it's new and good.
Understood.
And like you said previously, when someone comes into a house and it doesn't really have all the bells and whistles going for it, they don't look at it like maybe a can of paint, $500 could fix this room up to be beautiful. They look at more at like $50,000 or $5,000. They always add those extra zeros in, when in fact it could be a lot more cheaper than they think it is.
Because I remember watching, pre-kid, I used to watch all of the, the House Hunter type shows, and the cosmetic fixes versus like
Right,
the real
versus the real
structural
renovation,
fixtures.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, just think, okay, yeah, that is the world's ugliest lamp sitting there,
Right.
but you can change that.
Right.
But, if it's, picture window and, major walls being moved. That's something else too.
Just
Right.
like the shag rug era. Okay, we grew up with the paneled basements.
Paneling and
All right,
shag orange
in the
rug. That's why I hate
linoleum
the color
floors,
orange.
the paneled basements and the linoleum floors. Just going down with a bright, trendy color and painting it all and putting a bright rug in it. It's a whole different room.
Now, okay, we are just about out of time,
Okay.
or we are out of time.
Okay.
But the workshops that you were talking about, are those available through the website?
Yep, they're on the website. Yep, they're at Grandview Tavern right in the center.
Okay.
Usually the third Tuesday night of the month. I believe the next one is on September 20th.
Pre-registration required, or just show up?
Either one, if you can send us an email, but if you're not sure if you want to go and that day you decide to go, we welcome anyone who wants to come by.
Excellent.
It's open to everybody.
Yep.
And we serve the best pizza in the
Oh,
world.
we do. We
Oh.
serve pizza, free pizza.
Oh, there's food. Okay, I'm there. All right, but I do, well, we are out of time, as I just mentioned, and I do want to thank everyone for tuning in this evening. And I hope you enjoyed our conversation as much as I did, and get ready to sell your house.